Thanks for tuning in to the Starkey Multifamily Podcast. I have with me John Cleare. John is a wholesaler of apartments in the Detroit area. And so welcome to the show, John.
Thank you so much, Reed.
So John, thank you. John, why don't you start and tell me a little bit about how you got into multifamily? What were you doing before that and what sparked your interest?
Okay. Yeah, so I actually kind of stumbled into multifamily back in 2007. At the time, I was in Atlanta, and that's actually where I began my real estate career. I started buying single families when I was 21 years old, and became a landlord early. Didn't really care for it at the time, didn't really know what I was doing. So I started researching wholesaling. And, I was kind of going after the bigger stuff at first, like I had big pipe dreams. So I started going for like the luxury homes, like the big fix and flips. And then, and like this was back in 2006. And then 2007 is when I flipped my first apartment building, and it was in Arlington, Texas. And the cool thing about it was that the lead came from somebody that I had closed a single family deal with. And I didn't really know anything about apartment buildings or anything. So he kind of coached me through the deal. And he was in California. Yeah, like he was in California. But he had a great connection with multifamilies in Texas. So, it was like a total remote deal. I never saw the property, never met the buyer, never met the seller. And, I was able to bring the buyer to the table just through networking online and marketing the property online. And, we successfully closed. It took about 5 months to close the deal. There was a lot of back and forth. We had a lot of buyers kind of get cold feet. But yeah, when it successfully closed, it really was an eye opener. Essentially, the profit, the assignment spread on that deal was $250,000, and it was split amongst like myself and like a couple other people. And just for that to be my first apartment deal, it was just like wow. Yeah. So it was, I guess is love at first close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta follow up some questions on that one. So, I think a lot of people listening may think, that, man, what a lucky guy, he got this coming to him. But I'm guessing there's more than luck to that. So, it wasn't just, hey, I just happened to do a deal with the right guy. I know that you're out there hustling, and I know that there's more to it than just that. So, maybe can you share a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah. So actually, like before really I got on LinkedIn, I was doing a lot of networking on MySpace. That's actually, like seriously, like that's actually where I kind of built the buzz around my name, was back in the day on MySpace. And I had multiple MySpace pages, and I was just out there networking. And like, and back then, I was also on Facebook, but people weren't really like posting deals for sale that much on Facebook like they are now. Like, because back then Facebook was really just for people that actually were in college, and you had to have a college email address to even log in. So yeah, I would say that MySpace is really what started the brand early on, and just the networking and just constantly putting myself out there. And like LinkedIn was still around, but I wasn't that big on LinkedIn back then. I probably had like 2,000 connections, and really wasn't doing business on LinkedIn. But yeah, so all thanks to MySpace, and that's actually how I met the guy in California, through MySpace. And yeah, like the deal was definitely not easy. That's why it took 5 months to close. We actually had multiple buyers that like get to the closing table, have cold feet, and like I forget the exact numbers on it. I think that we sold it for like 1.2 something million, and it was appraised for like 1.7. And then, we had like a $250,000 assignment fee. And the buyer that we ended up going with, I mean, he had no problem paying the $250,000 because, he still had about $500,000 essentially, in equity. But yeah, like it definitely wasn't easy. There was a lot of back and forth negotiation. But it just taught me that not to have like an instant gratification type of mindset. If you keep the grind going, you know, good things can manifest.
Yeah, so you worked for free for 5 months to make that happen,
Exactly.
but that's a big payday, and clearly pretty awesome. So with that big of a spread, did you do a double closing, or did you just like, how did you structure that?
No, it was an assignment. So the guy who actually brought me the deal, his name was Eddie, and he had under contract, and you know he provided me with everything: the rent rolls, the P&Ls, all the financials, all the photos. He gave me everything I needed to essentially sell the deal. All I had to do was market, you know, the property, and that's all I did. And you know, it generated a lot of buzz, but it also generated a lot of tire kickers.
Hmm.
So, you know, I kind of had to deal with trial and error of properly vetting potential buyers. Back then, I don't even think I was asking for proof of funds up front. You know, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. You know, so I just knew that I had a great deal, and I just put it any and everywhere I could. And you know, after we kind of eradicated, you know, the majority of the tire kickers, then we were able to successfully close the deal, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's a great story. So would you say that's a better deal compared to what you're doing most of now, or are you getting that kind of a spread now?
Uh, yeah, we're really not getting that type of spread. Um, Not in Detroit necessarily. Really, Detroit, you know, the way that you know, that most of the multifamily properties are valued, you know, is of course by cap rate. But with that one, it was like, it was a great cap rate, which I don't even remember at this time what the cap rate was, but it had a great cap rate and it had equity. So it was just like the perfect, you know, like deal. So cash flow and equity. For the most part, what we're selling right now has great cash flow, but we also sell vacant apartment buildings that need complete rehab, you know, which that was surprising as well, just to see that there is actually a market for that. You know, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I closed my first vacant apartment building in 2017. So that was 10 years later.
Well, let's talk about that one, because you know, with vacant, there is no cap rate, doesn't exist.
Right.
So you know, how do you go in and assess a value? You know, because you've got to take, obviously you've got to take a cut, you know, so that you can sell it to another investor, and it takes a unique investor as well to buy a vacant apartment in Detroit.
It
So
does. And quite frankly, these weren't in the best areas. Most of them was actually on the east side.
mhm.
And it was kind of like, you know, blight all around it. So it kind of really took somebody with vision. And what we've been noticing is that there's been like a huge influx of cash from out of state and out of the country investors, especially in the Detroit market, you know, predominantly because of what's happened downtown, and it's kind of spreading a little bit into the inner city. So yeah, the majority of the apartment deals that we've sold in Detroit have gone to out of state, out of the country buyers. And most of the buyers seem to come from either New York, Cali, or Florida.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you determine the value of a vacant building?
Yeah, so you know, naturally we do look at sold comps from the MLS, but I guess my general rule of thumb, just right now for the Detroit market, is I try to sell vacants at or below 10K a door. That kind of is the sweet spot. So
Okay.
essentially, when I procure the property from the seller, I try to get it at 5K or less per door from the seller. And that way, I know that I have some negotiation room, I have some wiggle room, you know, and I can make a decent spread on the deal. And I still want to be able to offer value, because essentially, for fully occupied properties in Detroit, um, they're going anywhere from like 30 to 35K a door, you know, fully rehab, fully occupied. So we know that, okay, if we can give it to the end buyer at 10K or less, let's say they have to put like 15, maybe upwards of 20K in work per door, then that kind of still puts them at the 30K per door mark. But now they have a finished product, which either they can hold on to and just collect the cash flow, or they can flip it to an out-of-state person You know, like maybe somebody in New York, whereas the New York industry, you know, you'll be lucky if you get a 5% cap rate, you know, whereas in Michigan or, you know, especially Detroit, you can get a 15 to 20% cap rate.
Yeah, that's those are some good returns. So,
Yeah.
um, so then where are you? So you just strictly looking at cap rate when you're doing the fully rented, or are you just using the 35K a door?
Yeah. So like for the vacants, you know, like we pretty much use the rule of thumb 10K or less. For the occupy, like if it's like anywhere between 70 to 100% occupied, the sweet spot is like between 25K to 30K a door, you know, to flip it. And that's pretty much what the comp support, you know, that, you know, so you could go up to 35K a door. Like we have one right now. It's a 12 unit, it's fully occupied, fully rehab, all Section 8. And we're selling that one at 35K a door, you know, because it has high rents. Not in the best area, but it's kind of a gold mine. So
Yeah. So do you take any consideration to the area that it's in? So
definitely.
I mean, there's definitely some better markets in Detroit, and
Right, right. But yeah, the majority of the buildings, I mean, like we sold a couple on the west side. Like we sold a 27 unit last year. It was actually completely vacant, needed full rehab. It was about, I believe, like 3 miles away from Henry Ford Hospital, you know, and Wayne State. So it was in a decent area, but it needed complete, you know, complete rehab. And I believe we sold it for like 5K a door. Yeah, and it was a Florida guy. They ended up buying it. Yeah.
now do you follow the success of these apartments? Are they, um, you know,
Yes.
are they all making it into successful apartments, or are there some that don't quite make it? Or
Actually, so the trend is it kind of gets flipped and flipped and flipped until you have that one investor that's really going to take the dive and actually rehab it.
okay,
So we like to leave a lot of meat on the bone, you know. So, you know, like one day we closed 2 months ago. Like we sold it for 350. The guy turned around and sold it for 450 the next day, you know,
oh, nice.
and you know, like and like it was 75% occupied. So I do follow it because, you know, essentially I like to double dip if I can. So if I sell you a vacant product and you actually do fully rehab it and fully occupy it, I would love the opportunity to resell it again if you want to unload it. So I do kind of follow the progress, but yeah, for the most part, since we do leave a decent amount of meat on the bone, most of our builders just get flipped and flipped and flipped.
So are you representing them as a broker, or are you
No,
just
yes, I
wholesaling
actually
it both
don't
ways?
represent them in any, you know, fiduciary capacity at all. So, you know, I'm a private investor and they're a private investor. You know, some of them we do double close, some we do assign, and some we actually let the buyer and seller contract directly amongst each other, and we'll get paid. Like our fee agreement will get signed by, you know, either party. So we're pretty flexible on the way we structure the deal. You know, we just want it to go as smooth as possible.
Okay. So how did you start marketing for buildings? Are you only doing Detroit?
Um, so actually, let me back up a bit. So when in 2006, when I first started, I lived in Atlanta, and you know, of course, I was buying properties in Atlanta, and then I started wholesaling in 2007, and my primary markets were Texas, Florida, of course, Georgia, and it was one more: Texas, Florida, Georgia, and I believe Arizona. But I didn't close anything in Arizona. But I have closed deals in Florida, I have closed in Texas, and have closed in Florida. Um, so that's where I started, and that's really what I was primarily focused on trying to get, because the majority of the buyers that I had at the time, those were the markets that they were interested in. And then when I started, you know, when I like moved back to Michigan around 2011, that's when I got back into the Michigan market. And for the most part, I was doing single families, and I wasn't even dealing with Detroit really. I was only dealing with Oakland and Macomb because that's what most of the local buyers that I was dealing with in Michigan, they wanted the suburbs. So, we're doing, East Point, Warren, um, Oak Park, just different non-Detroit cities where, you can either fix and flip it and it's a great spread, or you can rent it at a decent rent rate. Not as high of a ROI return as you would get in Detroit, but it was, like more B type neighborhoods. And then in 2015, that's when we started predominantly focusing on Detroit. That was right around the time that the whole downtown movement was really catching stride around the world. People were really starting to hear about it. And we just had an influx of buyers that just kept on mentioning Detroit, Detroit. And it was kind of a balancing act because we have local buyers in Michigan where they're like, I want everything but Detroit. And then you have out of state, out the country buyers, it's like, all I want is Detroit. So we had to make a decision. Okay, do you deal with the local buyers or do you deal with out of state, out the country buyers? We kind of switched gears and, kind of left the local buyers high and dry, unfortunately, because we just kind of just stopped doing Oakland and Macomb, and 90+% of our deals that we closed were in Detroit. And quite frankly, the out of state and out the country buyers were paying at a higher price point than the local buyers were willing to pay. So we kind of went where the money was and the demand was. And so that's why ever since 2015, we primarily been closing in Detroit. Now we're kind of starting to venture back out into the, Oakland and Macomb areas. Like we recently closed like a fix and flip deal, wholesale deal, but it was a fix and flip in Southfield. And the spread on that one was crazy. And we were like, oh yeah, we've been missing out. So it's time to get back into Oakland. Yeah.
Good. So are you focused on any particular size? Like would you do a 500 unit or, what's your limit and for size either way, small and big?
Yeah, so the largest deal that we worked on was actually in Lansing. It was comprised of 3 separate apartment buildings, and I believe it was like 287 units. We were working on that one back in 2017, 2018. We would love to do more 100+ units, but that's only for like certain type of like accredited investors. The sweet spot is really like the 10 to 50 units. I would say that's really the sweet spot that the majority of the buying pool will be more so interested in. So the majority of our apartment buildings that we've been selling have been between that 10 and 50 unit mark. And we have many more buyers that can fit in that arena.
So you have, so we talked a little bit about, I guess we didn't really finish up on the acquiring deals where you're finding them. Are you doing marketing on like postcards, or are you calling them directly? Or you said you got a lot of word of mouth, but you had to build that somehow.
Right. Yeah, so back in 2017, actually that deal was a referral. One of my business partners, his name is Mike, and that was actually one of his clients because he also works in the financial services industry. And his client wanted to sell, and she had an apartment building. It was a 10 unit that she owned, and he was like, yeah, sure, we'll give it a shot. And that one took about 6 months to close as well, because the seller was up at 200,000, and we ended up having to get them down to 100,000 because, quite frankly, buyers weren't willing to pay 200,000, even though it was fully occupied. It was not in the best area. It was pretty much in a war zone. So it took like 5-6 months of negotiating to even get that deal done. But that one was a referral. So that's the first deal that that's the first apartment deal that we actually closed in Michigan. And that was in 2017. And then later that year in 2017, we did do direct mail. Quite frankly, we didn't really have great responses. And we realized that, okay, we got some responses, but we didn't really get any deals from the direct mail. It was pretty pathetic. Uh, and we did like a couple touch points, like, you know, we didn't go 5 or 6 iterations out, you know, like touch points. We only did like 2 or 3, and then after the 2 or 3, it was just like, okay, how can we better target these deals? So what we did, we went on MLS and we looked at recent expired listings, you know, that were multifamily, and, you know, the ones that didn't sell. And we started, you know, specifically reaching out to those sellers, and we had a better response rate. And then once we started closing, what really kept the referral pool going with the apartment buildings is that the power of social media. So like when we would close one, we would put it out there, hey, just so blah, blah, blah. If you're looking to buy or sell apartment buildings, feel free to contact us. So when other investors are seeing that you're actually closing things, that you actually have inventory, it kind of makes them raise their hand. And they're like, okay, you know, I know that you're a real player, you know, let me give you a shot. And that's kind of how the referral business really started. It was all based off that one successful deal, and it kind of snowballed into continuous referrals.
That's
Because quite frankly, the direct mail just didn't work, not for us at least.
yeah. I mean, it's a different market. You know, it's not the distressed owner. I mean, you've got the multifamily, so I
Right.
assume they're probably doing a little better financially. You know, so
Right.
they're not that desperate seller that you're trying to
Right.
hit with a single family. So that makes sense.
Right.
So you kind of touched on a little bit, but, you know, growing your buyer pool. So you said, you know, a lot of your social media from the sold, but what other methods have you taken?
Right. Yeah, so our buyers list is pretty huge. But we don't just have just buyers on it. You know, I mean, like we have agents on there, we have brokers, we have other wholesalers, we have bird dogs, you know, we have previous sellers, previous buyers. You know, we kind of have like a mixture of everybody because, quite frankly, you just never know who knows who in this business, and you know, like you can get a deal from the postal worker. You know, like you can get a deal when you're at the gym. You know, and it's just so we really try to cast a wide net. So yeah, the majority of the buyers list that I acquired at first, it was really from running a lot of Craigslist ads. You know, we really aren't that big on Craigslist anymore. But yeah, back then, like we would constantly run daily ads on Craigslist. Like the We Buy Houses ad, and like typical wholesaler stuff. And that's how we built like a huge buyers list. With multi-thousand of people on the list. And then now, most of our organic leads come from social media. So, when we have a property for sale, I usually put it in the post, hey, if you want to join the buyers list, sign up at this link. And then when we sell a property, I usually put the sign up link out there as well. So now people can kind of opt in, which is better anyway, because that you have interested people.
So what are you using to track all that? Do you have a CRM management you're using?
Yeah, so we've kind of tested a lot of different CRMs. I know a lot of people love Podio, and I forgot the name of another one. And I know that the one with Tracy Kaywood is pretty good, Property Mob. So we're kind of looking at hers right now. I think it's pretty cool the way she sets it up. And I know that Steve Landau, he also, I believe he uses Property Mob as well.
Yeah.
So we haven't fully decided on which one to go with just yet. So right now we really aren't using the CRMs. As far as where we keep our buyers, I mean, like we just put it in MailChimp. So like I said in the last podcast with Todd, I'm pretty cheap. So if I can do something for free, I'm going to pick the free option. So MailChimp is free up to 2,000 subscribers. And we actually have more than 2,000 people on our list. So we just have multiple MailChimp accounts. And that's how we do it.
Well, that works.
Yeah, so that's a little tip and trick. So if you get more than 2,000 people, you don't want to start paying $30, $50 a month to set up another MailChimp account for free.
Hey,
Yeah.
that works.
Yep.
That's clever. I like it.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to take your route and they wanted to start wholesaling apartments, what advice would you give them?
If they wanted to jump in quick, I would say the easiest way is to start off the way I started, JV. It may not be a spread that high as 250,000, but find somebody that already has apartment building under contract, and if it's a viable deal that you feel like that you can move, JV with them, and market the property. Try to market the property at the same price that they're marketing at, and see if they have room to fit you in the deal. You really don't want to be that wholesaler sending buyers properties at higher prices than they've already seen it. That's how you can get a real bad name really quick. So definitely try to stay away from that. Keep it at the same price, and see if see if the person that has it on the contract has enough spread in the deal to work doing the deal. And then once you build up your cash, from that, then you can kind of do more paid marketing, whether you do online marketing, like online Facebook marketing, or like like whatever type of AdSense property, AdSense marketing that you want to do, but yeah, so I would definitely say JV. I'm definitely an advocate for JV in properties. Actually, 90+% of my deals that I close are JVs. So I've always been fond of JVing.
That makes sense.
Yeah, less work, and you can close more deals.
I like it.
Yeah.
So how would somebody get a hold of you, John? What's the best way?
Yeah, so you can find me on pretty much all the social media outlets. John Cleare, Cleare. The E is silent. Or you can reach me directly. My direct phone number is 248-217-6055. My email address is johncleare@gmail.com. And, or you could just type in Clear to Close online. I should pop up.
And they could reach you if they have an apartment to sell.
Yes.
Now, if they had something in Texas, would you take it, or other cities? Or are you just looking in Detroit, or?
Yeah, so I definitely am, because like somebody just hit me up today and they have 6 properties in New Jersey, and the cap rate is actually pretty attractive. So I think I may start venturing out into other states again. You know, since we do have kind of the ebbing flow going on in the Michigan market, it's kind of on autopilot for us. I would like to tap into other markets as well again. Yeah.
And then if you have somebody who's interested in buying an apartments, they can reach out to you the same way, I assume?
Yes, either email, text, or just find me on social media. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, pretty much all the main social media outlets. Also on Connected Investors, Bigger Pockets, and that's actually how I learned real estate, through Bigger Pockets. Yeah, I just used to scour the forums every night and just lurk. I was just a lurker. I never commented or anything. I was just looking at what the top guys in the game were doing, and I just duplicated it. I didn't try to reinvent the wheel or anything. I just did what they did. Yeah.
Well, John, you're definitely a wealth of information on the topic of wholesaling apartments. So you're a hustler and you're out there kicking butt. So I definitely admire that.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Reed. And we definitely got to do a deal together soon.
Yeah, for sure.